Good morning. This month, February, as you've heard, is Black History Month, and each Sunday we'll start off this part of the service with a short video like this. They've been prepared by the African American Circle of the Center for Spiritual Living in Dallas, and they feature pioneers in science of mind. Now, Black History Month was first proposed by educators at the Kent State University in 1969, and the first observational celebration of it was a year later in 1970, and then by 6 years later it was being observed all over the nation in educational institutions and centers of Black culture. And then President Gerald Ford recognized Black History Month during the celebration of the United States bicentennial, and he said at that time that Americans should seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. And now the folk in Dallas have created these videos for us so that we too can honor and acknowledge and celebrate the contributions and acknowledgments of Black Americans to our very own spiritual movement, Centers for Spiritual Living. Now, here in Santa Rosa, we began our own celebration, as you heard, this past Wednesday with a gospel music concert. And the remaining Wednesdays of this month will be dedicated to Black History Month, and they will feature speakers like Calvin Johnson, Olivia Kinsler, and Lawrence Edwards, and everyone is welcome at 7 p.m. on Wednesday evenings. Now, to add to this observation, next Sunday we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to show a 20-minute video on what white privilege means to us as a spiritual movement and as individuals who are interested in co-creating a world that works for everyone. Okay, so the way it works is this. We're going to have to change things up next week to fit in a 20-minute video. So what we'll do is we'll skip a few things. We're going to skip the closing announcements. We're going to skip the closing song so that we can start the video 10 minutes before the end of service, which means we're going to run long. Okay? So I'm letting you know in advance so you can plan to stay a little longer next week. Now look, if you need to leave at your regular time, you'll still get to see half of the video. Okay? We'll understand if you have to leave. Now the video itself may stimulate feelings in you. It may stimulate deep questions, and so you might want to also plan to attend our diversity discussion group, which conveniently happens on the same Sunday next week at 1:30 p.m. Our diversity discussion group takes place every second Sunday of the month at 1:30, and it's open to all. And the purpose of this discussion group is to create the container, the space, the environment in which we can navigate through such ideas and such questions as what is diversity, inclusivity, what does social rank and status have to do with it, racism and privilege. Now, I'm going to get back to this question of privilege in a moment. I first want to talk about the focus here at the Center for Spiritual Living. The focus, you might say our program at the center, is for each person to become aware of the glorious and holy life that wants to live in us, and to let it come through into expression with as few blocks as possible. Now, what blocks us? Well, a number of things. Some are real and some are imagined. And our primary concern at the Center for Spiritual Living are the blocks that are within our own mentality. Those ones. Now, these are the blocks that are hidden from view because they're within. And we call them hidden beliefs. And they can be hidden from us for a number of reasons. For example, they may be hidden from us because of cultural conditioning. Everybody's doing it, so I don't notice it. Or it could be that it's hidden from us because, well, it's just too close for me to see myself, even though other people can see it quite clearly. I'll give you an example. Just recently, someone said to me, "Hey, Edward, you have a lovely accent." And it took me a moment, because as far as I'm concerned, I don't have an accent. She does. And I thought about it for a moment. I realized, I don't really go around thinking about my accent. But if I really get honest with myself, I do have a story about my accent, a belief system around it. And I'll tell you what I mean. You see, I grew up in South Africa, where a South African accent was considered to be rough and crude and undesirable by our other English-speaking neighbors. Yeah. And when I relocated to the United States, overnight my accent became charming. So I tucked away that little idea about my rough and undesirable accent, but don't you know it's still there, below the surface, And it showed up again recently. What happened? I wrote another book, and the publishers contacted me and said, "Would you like to read the book on the audio version yourself?" And I thought, what a wonderful opportunity. But I hesitated. And I didn't even know why I hesitated until I started to think about it. What's this about? Why would I hesitate with such a wonderful opportunity? And I realized because there, tucked away deep inside me, that invisible belief was still whispering into my ear, "You have a crude and undesirable accent." There it was. It was causing me to question my ability, the possibility of being successful, was causing me to hesitate. Now, the moment that the lady said to me, "You have a lovely accent," her words bumped right up against my hidden belief and kind of brought it up to the surface. And when hidden beliefs come to the surface, you can feel a sense of embarrassment about it, like that moment when you realize you've got parsley in your teeth and nobody told you, and you just did a job interview. How is it possible? Like when you become aware of a hidden belief, how is it possible? How is it possible for me to still be governed by this idea about how can it still be controlling me and influencing my choices and behaviors? You see, hidden beliefs can be embarrassing, because often we are the last ones to realize that we have them. So it's useful to bring hidden beliefs out into the open, to the surface very gently, where they can be seen for what they are, like ideas about white privilege. Now, from my perspective, I don't have an accent. It's not in my consciousness. From my perspective, I don't notice my whiteness. From my perspective, I don't go around thinking about privilege. And part of the reason for that is because privilege is about what a person does not have to endure. It's about what a person doesn't have to think about, never had to worry about, never had to cope with, never had to work around. It's like, I've got parsley on my teeth, I can't see it, so it's your problem. So deal with it, not mine. I don't go around thinking I've got an accent, but I do have one. And other people can hear it. I don't go around thinking I'm white, but I am. And other people can see it. I don't go around thinking I'm privileged, but I am. And when I am unaware of my privileges, I can become insensitive to the impact it may have on you. And I can become out of touch with what it might be like for someone who does not have my privileges to be in this world and not have access to the things that I take for granted. Now again, the focus at the Center for Spiritual Living Santa Rosa is for each individual person to become aware of the holy life that wants to express through them and to be mindful of all the hidden influences that are at play. So we might ask ourselves, am I being my own authentic person? Do I have integrity with my own soul? Am I bringing the goodness of that holy life that is within me out into the world in a way that I can be pleased with? And am I as awake and as conscious as I think I am? Kevin and I, we watch RuPaul's Drag Race All-Star. Yay! Now, if you don't know what that is, you got to look it up. I mean, it's an Emmy award-winning show on television. It's a RuPaul's national treasure. It's about drag artists, you know. Anyway, it's one of our guilty pleasures. We watch it at home. And then the other day we noticed a coffee shop downtown was hosting a public screening of the TV show. So we showed up to be there with, the people watching it. And something changed between being in a group of people compared to being at home watching. The energy of the group audience is contagious, And so we noticed we were laughing out loud much more in the group than at home when we kind of just giggle, And then at one point at the showing, I caught myself laughing spontaneously, and I didn't know why I was laughing. You see, I had become distracted by something else. I think I was ordering a cookie or something. So I don't know what was funny, but I laughed with everybody else because the room was laughing. I got caught up by the energy of the room, And it was okay to laugh. And in that moment, I thought to myself, who am I being right now? Am I being my true self, This is a relatively harmless example of the influence of the group. It did get me to thinking about two specific things. Number one, what it feels like to be in a welcoming, accepting, affirming, safe environment. And how a person's guard can come down. You see, Kevin and I felt safe to be ourselves in that environment. It's a privilege that we don't have everywhere in this country, in this world. Many other couples don't have to wait a moment, pause, and ask themselves, is it okay for us to be here before they walk into a coffee shop? Now, the movie Green Book shines the light on that from a racial perspective and shows how black travelers in our nation have faced major problems that are unknown to most whites. So privilege is about what a person does not have to go through. So if you've never had to plan your day or your visit to a coffee shop or your life around such things as safe passage or acceptance, then you are privileged. The second thing I learned from this little fun time at the coffee shop and laughing with people is how easy it is to get caught up with the group and to just go along with what's happening without thinking. So I'm asking myself, where else am I just going along with things. Rabbi Harold Kushner, in one of his books, tells the story of the Malden Mills textile factory that burnt down in the 90s. Overnight, 3,000 people lost their job. There was the whole town, Lawrence, Massachusetts. In the morning, 3,000 people woke up without a livelihood. It was burned to the ground. And no small detail was that it was just 2 weeks before Christmas. And then the owner, Aaron Feuerstein, he made a decision that surprised the world because he didn't go along with conventional wisdom. And what I mean by that is he could very well have just taken the insurance and retired a very wealthy man. He could have done that. But he didn't. He didn't go the popular route. He didn't relocate in another country for cheaper labor. He didn't rebuild in another state where it was cheaper. And shockingly, he decided that all of the people on his payroll would receive 2 months' pay while the rebuilding was taking place. And when asked about it, he said he made the decision because it was the right thing to do. He was keeping integrity with the holy life that was within him. And do you know he got a lot of publicity for doing this, which doesn't speak well for our society. That an act of altruism should be unusual enough to be newsworthy. He was doing what was right with the life that was in him. And where did he get his inspiration from? Not common knowledge, not the popular practices of business, but from his holy text, the Torah, which he explains, says that it is not permitted to oppress working people, poor people, vulnerable people, people who are not part of the community, and strangers to the culture. It's not permitted. It's not easy to always do the right thing. But I think it gets easier, at least for me, every time I get clearer on what it is that I want to bring forth into this world. And when I do, I feel it. I feel a rightness. It's like a cog in a gear that is slotting into the right place. Now, the focus here at the Center for Spiritual Living is for each person to become aware of this glorious life within and to start living from it so as to feel that rightness, that integrity of the soul. And I think that when you and I start paying attention to that inner holy life, we can expect things to start moving. In fact, I think there should be a warning label on this work. You may experience all or some of the following, like disorientation and confusion. Because you may start noticing and rejecting ways of thinking that don't work for you and for this world. And they may be ways of thinking that are so familiar for you that you've been taking them for granted without a thought to question them forever. Another warning. You may experience random waves of emotion when you do this work as you open up to looking into your blind spots, into your privilege, into your fears, into your blocks in consciousness. You may experience a wave of sadness, even loss, as you become used to the thought that the you that is you may need to become new. You may also, third warning, you may also experience a resurfacing of unresolved issues. Yay! Because as your heart and mind softens and opens, it creates the environment like the diversity discussion group where these unresolved issues can come forward in a safer context. Fourth warning, when you do this kind of work, you may experience anxiety. because you may be facing the unknown in you. You may be meeting a version of you that you've never met before. And it may feel so unfamiliar to you that you may notice rising up in you avoidance, rejection, denial, pushback, irritation, anxiety. Somebody might be sitting there going, wow, Edward, is there any good news? Well, yes, there is, and that's the topic for next week. Yes, we're going to talk about the upside of doing this kind of inquiry into our integrity, and how that when we do this kind of work, it results in an increased hunger for introspection and mindfulness, an increased hunger for integrity and accuracy and truthfulness, an increased hunger for loving kindness, inclusion, compassion. So, remember to plan to stay 10 minutes extra next week, because we're diving into the deep end with a gentle exploration of what does it mean to have white privilege. Now I'm going to invite you to close with me. I'm going to read to you a prayer. It's known as St. Francis' prayer, even though we are aware now that he didn't write it, it still remains a classic. So I invite you to breathe in and to exhale, letting your eyes close. Make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring love. Where there is offense, let me bring pardon. Where there is discord, let me bring union. Where there is error, let me bring truth. Where there is doubt, let me bring faith. Where there is despair, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, let me bring light. Where there is sadness, let me bring joy. And let me not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are raised to eternity. And so it is. I invite you now to take a deep breath in with me, followed by a sigh.
Here's a little-known Black history science of mind fact. Jamaican-born Marcus Mosiah Garvey Jr. is well known as a businessman, journalist, Pan-Africanist, and powerful orator of the early 1900s. As such, he attracted thousands of followers to his Black nationalist movement that became known as Garveyism. As founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, Garvey encouraged African Americans to be proud of their race and promoted cultural identity through his Back to Africa campaign. But did you know that Garvey was also a follower of the New Thought movement, as well as a student of the ideas and philosophies of religious science? In fact, Garvey studied the same New Thought philosophers as religious science founder Ernest Holmes and his brother Fenwick, and often quoted their teachings. He also was inspired by divine science co-founder Nona Brooks. Even the philosophy of transcendentalism, led by writer Ralph Waldo Emerson, resonated with Garvey. He excelled in merging racial philosophical concepts and science of mind principles while addressing the Black condition in America. The strong philosophical beliefs in self-mastery, determination, and willpower that Garvey preached to Black people aligned perfectly with the newly emerging teachings of science of mind. In many of Garvey's speeches and writings, he often urged his followers to get a scientific knowledge of religion. His message was clear: liberate the minds of men, and ultimately, you will liberate the bodies of men. Another instrumental Jamaican in Science of Mind is Dr. Elma Lumsden, who founded the Temple of Light Church of Religious Science in Kingston, Jamaica in 1981. An engaging speaker and master teacher, Dr. Elma is also known for her simple yet dynamic words of wisdom, such as, "Until you can walk on water, take a boat," and "Life is a school, and we're not on holiday." Due to her leadership and diligence, Lumsden helped the religious science become recognized as one of 12 key religions in Jamaica. Dr. Elma Lumsden and Marcus Garvey, Black evolutionaries in Science of Mind.